I'm Jamie O'Connell. I was a major in psychology and minor in sociology. I did not move on to get my graduate degree. I jumped right into the business world, and I now hold the position of Senior Manager of People Operations, which is also known as HR.
Welcome, welcome. All right, how about Erin next?
Hello, everyone. I'm Erin Sternad. I was a psychology BS major with minors in sociology as well as family and human development. And right now I am a marketing manager.
Great, great. How about Yolanda?
Hi, I'm Yolanda Fuller. I have a bachelor's in psychology and I received my master's in industrial organizational psychology. Currently, I work in ASU within the Knowledge Enterprise, and I'm the Associate Director of People Operations, which is HR, essentially.
All right, great, great. Welcome. And then Yonetta.
Hey everybody, I'm Ianeta Hutchinson. I graduated from ASU in 2014 with two undergraduate degrees, a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and a Bachelor of Science in Sociology. And then after ASU, I got a Master's in Information Systems at another university, Marist College. And now I am the Director of Solutions Engineering at a tech company called ReadyNet.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so welcome, and we look forward to learning a lot about your journey. So I guess I'll start off, maybe first off asking like a little bit more, if you could talk a little bit more about what do you do? What is your job? Because it sounds like you've got some interesting names for these jobs, and it's human resources can mean a lot of things. Or so if we could just kind of start off like kind of like what do you do on a daily basis, weekly basis? So I'll start with Jamie.
Yeah, something I really love about my role in people operations is no day is exactly the same, and that brings a lot of excitement to me. But I am on the true like operation side of HR. So what that means is we're in charge of all systems. So how people get paid, how they track their personal information, also work on policies, so handbooks, compliance, reporting, things like that. And then the more fun piece that I really enjoy is we do onboarding. So hiring individuals, making sure their first day to first week go really well and what that looks like, support them in enrolling in benefits, performance reviews, so how they're developing within the company, merit cycle, how they're getting rewarded for their work at the company. The employee support, so any questions, concerns, coaching that they may need throughout their time there, and then special projects as well. And then the not so fun part, the offboarding. It comes with HR. People leave companies, whether they choose to or whether it just comes to an end. So we work through all of that. And so really more of like your process, procedures, but I enjoy that it has a good balance of still having the human interaction and partnering with the business too.
Great, thank you, thank you. Erin, how about you?
Yes, so I, again, am a marketing manager at Meta, formerly known as Facebook. And the primary role that I serve is on our sales enablement marketing team. So if you call like 1-800 Meta, if you're a small business advertiser and you need to speak to someone on the phone, when you're talking to that person on the phone, they're using a knowledge repository platform that hosts all of our marketing materials globally. So I own that library, so to speak, that all of our marketing at Meta kind of funnels into for small businesses.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff you own.
Yes.
All right, Yolanda.
So exciting. So similar to Jamie, but I'll add in a bit here. So the ASU Knowledge Enterprise is essentially like the research pillar at ASU. So I get to work with a lot of scientists, engineers, professors that teach as well, and then staff and students on a day-to-day basis. And I support also their like full employee life cycle, whether they're at the beginning of like new hire or at the end of the journey. And I oversee the total rewards, talent acquisition, and then employee relations / performance management functions. I lead a team of about 20 employees in those areas. And then just ensure that those are operating efficiently. I do a lot of process improvement strategy as well, just thinking ahead into like trends and then what we need to focus on as a team. And then I do a lot of consulting with our leadership on different areas, whether it's like again, like a performance management or employee relations issue, looking at like a program we need to establish. So it is nice to have different like day-to-day priorities, and it keeps the job very interesting for me.
Great. Yeah. So lots of talk here about process and how to make this work, how to make people work more, kind of more effectively and feel rewarded as well as just making sure the process works smoothly. That's very cool. And Yonetta.
Yeah, so it's a very similar theme. A lot of my time is in operations and productivity. So really, the company that I work for, we make software that supports states as they drive to build infrastructure that gets utilities to families. And so the utility that we care about most is, or that we're working on right now, is broadband internet. And so what my team is responsible for, or what I'm responsible for, is our technical implementations. And so what that means is onboarding the states and configuring our platform for their needs, right? So I manage a team that's working on innovations to drive acceleration and scaling of innovation. So like, how do we go and meet twice the needs of twice the customers or twice the states? How do we go and have our platform support way more people, way more verticals, or way more different utilities? So working on innovations and driving acceleration and implementation, and then also, and this is going to be a theme, and I think it's where I've seen most psych majors in tech, is innovating in the flow of information in between. So in between different teams. So for us, it's between like implementation and engineering, or between implementation and the product teams, or between product teams and engineering. So that's where I kind of live.
That's cool. So it's a lot of that people side of things and getting it all to work better and figuring out when when you have a structure and when one size doesn't fit everybody. So how do you handle that? All right, that's great. How did you all get there? So from undergrad, how did you make it to where you are? We'll start off with Jamie. Your journey from your undergraduate studies to your current position.
Yeah. So I won't go through my college experience, but I really became a psychology major because I have a passion for helping people. So it was like I'm interested in how people work together, dynamics, relationships. Um, and really enjoyed my entire experience. But I did an internship in the American Cancer Society and more of like the counseling, interpersonal relationships, and then a HR internship. And I really enjoyed the HR piece that allowed me to work kind of my natural talent of logical, methodical process work that I'm just wired in with this passion to help people and like grow individuals. Um, so with that, I started off as a recruiting coordinator and then moved into an L&D, so learning and development role. Quickly moved into an HR coordinator role, so really learning the HR basics. And I stayed in that role for about a year and then progressed into an HR generalist role. And I stayed there for about 5 years at various companies. A passion of mine is working at companies that are growing very quickly. So hiring up to like 300 people in a month. There's very little process, procedure. You're kind of building the plane as you're flying it, as many tech companies like to say. And I found that like I personally enjoy bringing like chaos to order, or like really trying to help build the process and make the connections that Anita was talking about. And I just really enjoyed being a generalist and learning so many different parts of the HR world. But I really started loving the business relationships that I was making with leaders. And so with that, I decided to take the next step to become an HR business partner, which is much more of that strategy work, business partnership, large picture versus your day-to-day operations. And although I loved it, they'd bring up a project and my brain would be like, how are we going to operationalize this? Like, what steps do we need to take? What process needs to be updated? And that's where I had a conversation with my manager, and she was like, well, do you miss operations? I was like, yeah. She's like, well, why don't you think about leadership in the operations space? Like, is that of interest to you? And so it was. And so I was able to luckily take a few positions that were project management roles as well as people leadership roles more in the true operations of HR. And then was lucky enough to land a role at Nerdy, which is a tech education company, as their senior manager of people operations. My team is small but mighty. There's four of us in total, and we support around 2,000 employees. Well, a mix of employees and contractors. And so we do a little bit of everything, and every day we're improving like process, procedure, there's projects, there's your normal day-to-day tasks, but it's been a wild journey. And I think everything I've learned up to today made me really successful in this position that I've held for about 2 years now.
Wow. Okay. That's great. It's funny
Yeah.
how I hear like the research process going on there of how do you, how do you implement something? How do you, when you said operationalize, I was like, oh God, yes, that's research methods coming back. So very cool. Thank you.
Yes, there are classes that I really disliked in my undergrad that I now realize I use every single day. And I'm like, how did that happen?
Okay. Listen up, everyone. I've heard that before. Uh, Erin.
Yeah, so my journey, I went into ASU actually one track minded, wanting to become a marriage and family therapist. So, kind of everything that I did in my undergraduate career was really oriented towards that. But I grew up in the Bay Area, and when you're a broke college kid, one of the best ways to make some money is in tech. So, in the summers, I would internship for tech companies. So, just to kind of have that little option in my back pocket. And that's how I kind of got my foot into tech, actually. So I got my first internship my freshman year, working for Network Appliance, doing their like, they had a submission for Fortune magazine. In tandem, when I was at ASU, I was actually working in the Teachers College for America Reads. Shout out to America Reads. It's worth a Google. And I think that kind of built skills on both sides for me. And so America Reads, I stayed with, actually worked my way up within the Teachers College and became a site manager. So kind of hung out at ASU a little bit after graduation, managed programs in the Teachers College, and then actually did kind of a pivot while I was waiting for my boyfriend, now husband, at the time to graduate from Ira Fulton. And I jumped over to Carvana. Shout out to Carvana in Phoenix. That was like pre-IPO, crazy times there. So parked it at Carvana for a little while and then followed my at the time boyfriend, now husband, to California when he got a role as an engineer. And then I started working for Cal State Long Beach in their president's office. Kind of adjacent, but with my ASU background, it kind of let me like do, I think it was like a special project. It was a contracting gig for like a special marketing project thinking about like the future of the university. And they loved that I had come from ASU. All of my experiences were kind of random. I feel like I'm collecting like the little infinity stones of random skills. Like it wasn't exactly a linear progression, honestly, but each one was kind of a stepping stone that got me to the next level. And then so from CSU Long Beach, I took a contracting gig with Apple. I really kind of wanted to solidify my spot in tech. The big FANG companies, as they're called, are kind of really hard to get into. Some say it's easier to get into Harvard, honestly, and I believe it. But the foot in the door to doing that is actually via contract gig is one of the ways you can kind of network and kind of force your way in. So I did that with Apple, was there for about 4 years, and then made the jump over to Meta in 2022 and joined their marketing team. And I kind of did not have any marketing experience, honestly. It was finagled. It was a massage marketing experience. But I think what really came to show was like what a lot of folks here have touched on is like operational rigor, being able to manage projects and programs. And I honestly think like having a psychology background allows you to kind of be like a little multi-tool. I wouldn't say I have any like specific super strong skill, but I think having this background allows you to do a little bit of everything, and it's actually like really underhyped. It's kind of very valuable, I've learned. So yeah, that's where I am now.
And I will say, Erin, because I worked with you as a TA for a few years. I think you have many skills, so don't undersell yourself. But but it is interesting in hearing this, like that. That's like you're getting this idea of the collecting the infinity stones is something that makes a lot of sense. That you don't. I think so many times we have this idea of this linear path that I'm just going to go from point A to point B to point C and I'll get there. But it sounds like, and I hear this with Jamie too, of like you kind of you go into one area and then you discover a little bit more and then you pivot over here. And so it's interesting to hear how just it's by trying things that you figure out what you really like more.
Yes,
I like
lots
it.
of trial and error. And my husband, who's also an ASU alum, we have this saying in our house where you got to just follow the cheese. So it's like, you end up in one place and then sometimes the wind takes you a different direction, and that's kind of the move to make. So we've made a lot of pivots that have just paid off, and along the way you collect the skills that you need for the next gig.
That's great. Thank you. Yolanda.
Yes, I'm just gonna say yes. So I had like a short-lived, like towards the end of my undergrad, I was kind of also thinking like, do I want to go like the behavioral, like explore like counseling, or do I want to get a graduate degree in like industrial organizational psychology? That was something that I was really interested in. And both of those areas I was just kind of thinking through. And so in my final year, I did get a position essentially partnering with CPS as like a behavioral support for children. And that was so hard for me. And it just let me like, it helped me realize like, hey, emotionally, like, I don't know if this long term would work for me. And I was still like really interested in industrial organizational psychology. And so pretty much like right after I graduated with my bachelor's, I was exploring programs. ASU at the time didn't really have that pathway when I was going to school. And so I did end up going externally and got a master's in industrial organizational psychology. As I left that position, I wanted to get my foot in the door within HR, and recruiting is where I started. So I started working for a recruiting agency serving essentially like the Bay Area Fortune 500 as like a separate agency, not directly within a company. And it really exposed me to different positions, working with different organizations at that level. And then when I saw a position open up at ASU within the Biodesign Institute, I was really drawn to it and wanted to go back to ASU. And I interviewed for that position and really connected with the hiring manager. We both had that, she had the graduate degree that I was pursuing at the time. And so she did end up selecting me for that position and kind of became a mentor to me in my time working under her. And I wanted to start in recruiting, but ultimately was interested in like a HR business partner role and leading a team. And so over the years, I did become the manager of the talent acquisition function, and then ultimately ended up overseeing all of the functions within our team that I do now. We've had two mergers since I joined the Biodesign Institute, which presented a lot of opportunity for me. We joined the Knowledge Enterprise, and then we ultimately merged when the College of Global Futures was created, and we oversee their HR processes as well. And that allowed me to grow, meet new people, learn about new areas as well. And I think that's contributed a lot into where I am now.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. It's great to have you back here right after going out. So it's welcome home.
Thank you. Yeah, I hit my 10 years. I'm actually being celebrated at the Service Awards here in a couple months. I hit my 10 years working at ASU here in June. So,
Oh, yay. Excellent. Yanetta.
Yes, so I showed up at ASU. I didn't know what the heck I wanted to be when I grew up. And I didn't know what jobs existed for people with degrees. So I was the first in my family to get a degree. So it wasn't until I landed at ASU that it was like, okay, what exists? What have I just bought myself an opportunity for? So I got to ASU by getting a water polo scholarship. So that was my ticket in. And then it wasn't until I showed up that I was like, okay, this is psychology. And I ticked that box. What does it mean? I have no idea. And I kind of just continued in that train where I tried to get as much out of it as I could while I was at ASU. And then I went on to another university to coach water polo, and that was what paid for my master's. And again, it was like, I don't know what I want to be. I don't know anybody. I don't have this like starry goal for where I want to work, but I Googled, how can I make some money and follow the cheese. So what showed up was a degree in computer science and information systems. I knew just enough R from my teaching assistant or research assistant at ASU. So that enabled me to get into the degree, and then just kind of kept running from there. So what running looked like was that the technical degree or information systems, after the first year, then I could apply for internships. And so I got an internship at Intel. And so that internship, again, like there's a theme of like, I don't know what the hell I was going to do. I didn't know what my job meant. And when people asked me what I was studying, I was like, information systems. And then that was it. But through that internship, it's just figuring it out as you go, being as useful as possible. Then I was successfully wore the hat as a software engineer intern. That turned into a job offer, a full-time job offer within Intel. I took that, and then that allowed me to really bounce around. For me, it was the engineering organization. So I didn't get exposed to like people teams or HR teams or operations and what those jobs looked like until I landed at this big corporation and got to see like, oh, there is an HR team that's a job that exists. Oh, there are these people that are working on how fast we work. That's a job that exists. But I bounced around for 5 years within Intel, and I held titles like software engineer to start, and then I went and like tried to stay technical, but I hate to code. It's awful. I just want to throw my computer out the window. But I learned enough to get me the job. But yeah, I was a software engineer, and then I moved to being a technical writer. So I'll explain software and I'll be the translator for technical and non-technical people. Project manager. And then I moved to like engineering manager. And it wasn't until engineering manager that it was like, oh, these are the skills. It was like a recall where I'm no longer using thinking about like what I learned in school. I'm no longer leaning on my master's in computer science. Now I'm actually leaning on psychology. And that's where I could see like all of that knowledge starting to come back, or not starting to come back, but like actually being able to flex it. Um, and then so I got my green card, and so I quit. And then I started my own company. I thought that I quit to go and study a PhD in psychology. Um, and Dr. C kindly wrote me a letter of recommendation in 2020. But I actually ended up founding a software company instead. So I was the co-founder and CEO of a small startup that was building developer tools. So teaching people using AI to teach folks how to thrive in their early developer, and as an early developer, as someone like me that showed up without a lot of technical skills, but how to thrive in those careers. Like the vast majority of startups that failed, which is cool. It was a fun ride. And then 2 years ago, I started at ReadyNet. And that was where I just got promoted to being a director of solutions engineer. So the door in was in operations within engineering or with an engineering focus. And now I've shifted to like more leadership within the company.
Wow. I mean, all of you, what really interesting pathways of just, like you said, it's like whether it's pivoting or whether it's this looks kind of cool kind of approach. I love this. Um, Let me ask this. So what psychology skills or what skills that you learned from or you developed in your undergraduate do you see yourself using now, if any? Jamie?
Yeah, so three come to mind, and I think one everyone on the panel has represented is like being so open-minded. Like psychology taught me to like look at everything from like various perspectives and um how does it resonate with me? How can it resonate with others? And I think it just really kept my mind so open to the opportunities and like also very open to feedback. Like, hey, do you realize you're incredible at operations? Like, do you want to explore that more? And then taking a look inward and being like, oh, my mind is really analytical. Like, maybe this makes sense. So I think like all the classes I took just really opened my mind to have this like growth mindset and like really open to opportunities and other people's input and commentary because you get that in any corporate world. Then it's like being comfortable with ambiguity. I think we all just talked about like whether you're in work or school, sometimes you walk into a class and you're like, this is so out of my element, or am I on the right path? Like, do I know what I want to do? Like, a lot of us have a goal, but then it changes in a year, or we realize, oh, hey, that's a very small part of a much bigger goal. Like, there's just so much ambiguity. And so, getting really comfortable with being okay with not knowing everything or not knowing the plan, or maybe being comfortable shifting it. Um, and I think I was really uncomfortable with that in college. Like it kept feeling like a failure to me, like, oh, I'm changing again, or I'm shifting again, or oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. And now I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I can figure it out. Or like, hey, the
Mm.
plan's changing and this is great. Let's find a new way to do this or something different. So, I would say those are kind of like more like soft skills that I think college gave me, whether it be in psychology or another degree. But then I think, as I mentioned, some classes that I didn't particularly love included like research methods and statistics. And man, do I use those skills all the time. And I'm just like laugh at myself when I'm sitting here excited about a spreadsheet and how am I going to like analyze this data and how am I going to present it and what is it going to look like and will people understand it? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm right back in college, but I'm presenting in front of, leadership and I'm actually enjoying it. So just be mindful that some classes you might not like today, you might actually end up using in the future in a way that you enjoy how to apply it. So those would
Ec-
be my big three.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Erin.
I feel like my head is gonna like fall off my shoulders by how much I'm like nodding and agreeing. I plus one to everything Jamie is saying. I think to add to that, like from me thinking through the ASU lens, I wasn't expecting to find so much value in my role in being the numbers person in a words room, and then conversely being the words person in a numbers room. And I think having like a Bachelor of Science in psychology kind of like lends to that blend of both like science and also like very human focused and people led. I think to add to that point about like the classes you may not love, I think reading and interpreting data is a very underrated job skill when you think of yourself being in like a soft skills environment, like marketing, for example. But I think that ability is actually very powerful and allows you to kind of progress from like if you want to advance your career and kind of climb that ladder, it allows you to go from being just like an individual contributor to a more strategic thinker. And I think lends itself to what leadership is looking for. And I think with that psych degree comes audience awareness. So, like, what do you do with the data really matters, and knowing how you're going to show that data to different groups, how you're going to speak to different groups. The way I speak to our web developers and engineers is very different than how I speak to our marketers and our sales teams, and then also leadership. Like, I think being able to put yourself in their shoes and think about how to how to code switch for lack of a better word. I think that's very valuable. And then poor joke, but like working with children at ASU, my gosh, so much of what I do feels like just a glorified professional babysitter. And in a way, I feel like you having a psych degree makes you realize you kind of become everyone's bootleg therapist in a corporate environment and how much of like getting things to work well together, especially if you're in operations, or if you're like managing projects and programs, like it really all comes back to the people that you work with. So being able to manage those relationships and having like a high EQ is, I think really underrated, at least in my world in tech, where everyone cares about like what are you doing with AI and what are you building, but like the soft skills will I think actually really um, set you apart and being able to like corny but like emotionally regulate yourself from psychology and like a fast-paced stressful work environment, like how do you not get lost in the sauce and recognize like it may be challenging now but like I like Jamie said, like I'll figure it out. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Erin. Yolanda.
The glorified babysitter hits me as well. So thank you for sending these in advance because it let me think through this a bit. Writing and communication skills are critical in HR. So I every day, right, I'm either writing up a contract. Sometimes I feel like a lawyer, honestly, with just like all the legal situations going on. And then data analysis is really important. So if I'm trying to get leadership buy-in, I need to be able to paint a picture of what the problem is, and I need data to show that. So being able to dissect data, look at trends, look at where there might be gaps, and really being able to pitch and request whether it's more money or request just their buy-in on something. Because if I'm communicating, it's not as effective. Like I want leaders top down to communicate things, but a lot of the times, like HR is the one making the recommendation. So I have to be able to like package that up in a way that they can like see the full picture. So that's been really helpful to be able to exercise those skills, and it's every day. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Yolanda. Yanetta.
Yeah, so I think like hearing a lot of empathy and like an acceptance of where people are at so that you can teach them or communicate with them or accelerate them. I think about like really early in my career. So it's only been 10 years, but like year one, two, and three, it was data analysis and having really strong writing skills. So being like writing papers and being able to form an argument, really important to be able to carry through that logic and communicate that way. As time goes on, I think about like the word, you're learning about research, but the word experiment and this idea of experimentation is thrown around a lot in engineering conversations, and especially when you're talking about process. So I'm a process person sitting in the technical organizations, and it's really been valuable to like have a foundation of research and be able to now I'm more of like it's coaching others or coaching these younger engineers and going, okay, but you're you're doing an experiment, but are you really running an experiment? Like, what are your variables here? And talking through that. Can you really attribute that outcome to the change that you made? You know, what's our North Star here and how are we going to get there? And what are our levers that we're going to change? And just having a foundation to be able to kind of check people's thinking, ensure that they are thinking critically, me myself thinking critically, like that was really the foundation of undergrad for me is being able to think. But certainly also like I've ended up, even though in the beginning it was using a lot of technical skills, ended up being a glue person and being this like operations person that goes, okay, what's the hat that I have to wear and where is everybody else at that I have to communicate to? So that's what I'd say.
That's great. Thank you all. I really do appreciate that. And I think, and I wanted to point out there's a question here because what I'm hearing from you all is a lot of the skills from psychology that are sometimes thought of as soft skills are what seem to be getting people jobs more and more. That this is valued. But we have one of the students raises this really great question is how do you talk about those soft skills? Because it's something that you show when you get into the interview, but getting into the interview, you have to have something that makes it through on the resume. Are you aware of, I guess we've got people from HR who may know a little bit about key phrases, key words, anything that would help, especially for people to be able to advertise their strengths. Does anyone have any? I'm going to kind of throw this one out to anyone who wants to try to answer that.
Yeah, I think, you know, as I was thinking about answering some of these questions today, like AI is changing our world today, and I think it does change how resumes are reviewed. Um, I strongly believe at this point, like it may seem cumbersome, but you really should tailor your resume to the job you're applying for, like not having a generic resume. Um, and if you're not being referred for a job or you don't know someone who works there, like make sure the key words in that job description or the job, post that you're looking at, you have those key indicators on your resume because that's how you're going to get flagged and get that initial conversation starting. And that's where you can then kind of really show who you are and speak to those soft skills and speak to examples of how you use them or how you've developed them and how you hope to grow them. So it's so hard because, again, it's a changing world where people used to review resumes, and that happens very little these days. It's now AI reviewing it. So that would be my initial thought and recommendation, but would love to hear from the rest of the group.
I would echo what Jamie's saying. I think, at least in my world, the big buzzword, we just finished performance reviews at Meta. So the big buzzwords are navigating ambiguity, like always, how do you strategically problem solve? How do you like exhibit like autonomy and like your ability to have like judgment, and also like make big bets. I think in terms of like what Jamie said about when you're applying for roles in my world, every job that I've gotten, not every, but like a lot of them, at least with Apple and Meta, was through networking. And I think my ability to do that, like with psychology and soft skills, honestly, is a big one. Like I think the being approachable and being warm and being willing to kind of put yourself out there for me at least and message someone on LinkedIn, my secret sauce was always like, "Hey, I see you work here. Could I virtually buy you a quick cup of coffee for 15 minutes of your time? I would just love to poke your brain about this company and see how you like working there." As opposed to like a general cold call of like, "Do you have 5 minutes?" Like I think understanding the mutual exchange of like, well, what's in it for them? It's like, oh, she's gonna Venmo me $5 or $10 for some coffee in exchange for my time. And I think some of those little, it might sound transactional, but it's increased my ability to get like a nibble back, and the ROI has been very strong. So thinking through like in an AI-centric world, you really do kind of need a referral. So utilizing those people skills whenever you can. Yeah, shoot your shot.
I
Cool.
also think, sorry, was someone else speaking?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say when you're job hunting, and I think also when you're newer to that, you'll see like there's minimum qualifications and then desired qualifications. And I think a lot of people who meet the minimum sometimes like hold themselves back from applying because there's this long list of desired qualifications, and then they start comparing themselves against that and think like, oh no, they're not going to consider me because I'm not an 100% match. But I really think it's like in that like you might be an 80% match, and you end up getting the job because you are showing that you're coachable, you're willing to learn, and then having the ability to take feedback and grow, I think are really critical. And I noticed that a lot of like hiring managers are more successful with individuals who like you may know everything, and if you're not coachable, you're not going to be successful in the job, right? So I think it's really important to, regardless of where you are in your career, always be coachable, but also recognize like don't hold yourself back from applying because that in itself may be creating a funnel where you have more limited opportunities there. And then really when you get to the interview stage, like Jamie said, that's where you would show like those soft skills. It's kind of hard on paper sometimes to really get that across, but opening yourself up to like if you have an interview, make sure you get you're able to show them that you are coachable and want to grow and will be able to learn different skills that you may not have currently. So,
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I think I agree. Everybody should like write this stuff down, but and um I think as well when I think about the opportunities, especially early on when I hadn't had a job before, or I had had a job, but it was like in retail, so it was very difficult to bring something on my resume. But right now, or sorry, I think the big thing is convincing people that you are smart and that you can learn and really impressing them before you need something in exchange, right? So you have this free pass as a student. And I mean, I've done it before where you've gone and you've got an assignment and you just want to show it to somebody that's actually in the industry, or that's the idea that you're going to bring. I've got something, or I want to impress this person by going and talking to them, run an interview with them. I see that you're a psych degree. I'm also a psych degree. I'm figuring out what jobs I want to apply for. I'm not asking them for a job. They don't even have to be in a company that is hiring, but just like start learning the language of how are these people speaking about their jobs? You've got some people in the call right now that I'd be happy to give you 5 minutes of my time just to talk about you. And I'm not hiring right now, so it's really difficult to take a call from someone when you think that there's going to be a request for something. But if you're really just looking to learn, then it's an opportunity to establish a relationship. And you can do that with anyone And maybe you pull them in by throwing $5 or $10 at them and buy you a coffee, and they probably won't accept your money, but something to get in the door. And then just in that first call, just try not to ask for anything and lean into learning, and while you're talking, you're very smart. Think about the questions you're asking, think about how you can impress them, even just a little bit, right? And then that's going to be the foundation of this relationship that later on, maybe you can, you're not thinking about it, but later you can go, oh, there is a position at their company or somewhere nearby, or you can show them your resume and then you can say, hey, what do you think of this resume for this other job? And then that's some of your interview skills, because it's nerve-wracking talking to people. And it's good to kind of get used to that stress.